What's going on, bookworms and bibliophiles? Welcome back to the library. It is I, the Spoken Shelf. Guys, have we got an absolute banger today? I'm back at it again with another book review here, and this author quite possibly might be my 2026 author of the year. I know that's saying a lot just because there are so many great authors out there, and some other great books from just another author off the top of my head that I can think of was James Islington with his Hierarchy series. We're going to be doing book reviews of that on the channel, of The Will of the Many and Strength of the Few. I am so excited for that next book in that series, which I heard is actually 4 books now. If you haven't heard that through the wire, that's coming out next year. But today is going to be the very first of a series that we're going to be doing. This first book is Malice by John Gwynne from the Faithful and Fallen series, guys. Yes, an absolute banger of a book. I have read the first 4 books in this series. There is 4. And then there's also a continuation that happens 200 years later. That's another set of books that I'll also be doing on the channel. It's the Of Blood and Bone trilogy. I am on the 3rd book of that right now, and it is a nail-biter, and it is absolutely amazing. So please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy the content, enjoy listening to my book reviews. It's always greatly appreciated. You guys know what to do. Sit back, relax, as I go over the hook, the characters, what I think this book really stands out to certain audiences, of course, what I recommend it and what I think the story. So let's go. Okay, so first and foremost, what is the hook and the first impression of Malice? This is a particular kind of fantasy novel that announces its ambitions on the very first page, guys. It's not through a spectacle, not through an explosion of magic or being plunged into a battle, but through sheer weight of the story and the area around you. You are entering a world that kind of seems like it's been turning over for a long time before you even got there as the reader, and will keep going even after you leave. That's how great Malice is, and how John Gwynne has actually written this kind of novel. Like I said in the intro, this is the first book in the Faithful and the Fallen series, and from its opening chapters, Gwynne makes one thing absolutely clear. He is building something. This is not just a single story or a one-off. It is a mythology that he is also building too. The world is shaped by an ancient war between 2 divine factions, the Benelim and the Catashim. The Benelim are a type of angel race that serve their god of creation, Elion, who is the god of this world, creator of everything, including the opposite faction, the Catashim, these humanoid demon entities, and their king Azroth. The land itself is called the Banished Lands. That is the name of the area that's fought over throughout this series and the other series afterwards. And the Catashim and Azroth threaten to consume it entirely. Also in this world, though, he drops ordinary people. There's farmers, there's warriors, there's children, people that seem to have no particular destiny written on their foreheads, or so they believe anyways. And then he begins with an enormous patience and considerable craftiness, I want to say, to show you just how the cosmic and personal are never truly separate. Anybody can kind of come out of nowhere and change the world. It's kind of a great quote that's from Lord of the Rings, when Galadriel looks at Frodo and says, even the smallest creature can change the course of the future. I feel like that sets that tone really well with Gwynne's book here. This book is also an epic fantasy in the most literal sense of the word. It's not epic as in a synonym for large, although the series is large and it's amazing. It's epic as it is mythical, foundational, I would say. It's the kind of story that feels like it was going to be told and has been passed down for generations to generations. The question is, of course, does Gwynne deliver on that promise? Absolutely, guys. Absolutely he does, and I cannot wait to tell you more about it. The next part we're going to be talking about is the atmosphere and the setting, guys. So let's talk about the Banished Lands, because Gwynne's world is one of the great underappreciated achievements in contemporary epic fantasy world building, in my opinion. On the surface, it draws from familiar wells that you might see, Dark Ages Britain, Norse mythology, the aesthetic language of iron and mud and firelight that readers of like Bernard Cornwell or David Gemmell will recognize immediately, but Gwynne does something with those ingredients that elevates the setting beyond that. He gives the world a theological architecture. The Banished Lands are not simply a medieval backdrop. They are a battlefield. Every kingdom, every fortress, every farm, forest path exists in the shadow of a war that began before living memory. It's a war between, again, that Ben Elim, those angelic forces, the forces of a god called Elyon, and the Kadashim, servants of their god Azroth. This conflict has shaped the land, salted its history, and now, after centuries of uneasy tension, it's preparing to break open again. What this does brilliantly, I might add, is give every location a sense of consequence. A villager is not, or village rather, is not just a village. It sits on ground that has been contested, bled over, and that means something to the larger story and the story of the characters, and that's only, the beginning of our understanding with this book. Gwynne has also a gift for atmosphere that doesn't announce itself. He doesn't, maximize everything right away or in your face, kind of like the way Buellman in my last video, if you saw that, how everything is very intense and go, go, go. His writing is cleaner, more direct. It's a slow burn, but you love it all along the way. But the good part of that is his settings let it kind of breathe a little bit and settle, and you're drawn into it. You feel the coldness of the Banished Lands. You feel the isolation in its scattered kingdoms. You also kind of feel that particular dread of the world that, you know that there's something coming and you can't do anything to stop it. You feel that chill come over you as you read it, which is absolutely fantastic. It's a world that earns your investment slowly and then refuses to let you go. And that's what just draws you in. And it's incredible. And next I want to talk about some of the characters here in this book. So let's talk about the people that Gwynne populates this world with. Each character where, epic fantasy most often stumbles, and where you see some early writer development from some authors trying to build multiple characters, you see them stumble a little bit. Gwynne consistently succeeds in his character development. Malice follows multiple points of view of different characters across different kingdoms and social levels. This is a structural risk with writing, of course. If it's done poorly, fragments and momentum can kind of dilute the whole story, and it can make it really hard to follow. Done well, though, it can create, I would say, like a tapestry of a whole greater picture that you see as it builds throughout the book, where each thread kind of is illuminated by others, and Gwynne does this very, very well. At the center of all this is a young man named Corbin. He's a young man of no particular, distinction when we meet him. He's a young man. He has a real simple life. There's no secret destiny announced in the opening chapter to him. There's no magical birthright thrust upon him. He is a boy just learning how to fight, navigating loyalty to his family and friends, trying to understand a world that seems to be changing in ways that no one can fully articulate. His arc in this book is slow, like most characters. It's deliberate, but carefully slow. And that patience is intentional because Gwynne is not interested in the chosen hero trope, which I love. It's very refreshing. He is interested in making of one. The difference matters enormously. Around Corbin, Gwynne builds a cast that spans kings and warriors, scheming nobles, loyal companions, characters whose allegiances shift back and forth and whose motivations are rarely simple. There's a lot of moral questioning in his characters that you see. The villains in here also deserve particular mention. They are not evil for evil's sake necessarily. They believe in something, they are pursuing something, and that ideological conviction makes them genuinely unsettling in a way that mere cruelty just couldn't. They're not just mean people. They have reasons behind it, and it's chilling and also just thrilling to read. There is also, it must be said, a wolven named Storm. She is an absolutely majestic creature, and you will come to love her just as much as Corbin does. Gwynne understands that readers follow people, not just plots. Every strand of this sprawling narrative is anchored in a character whose interior life you come to care about a lot. And that is harder to craft than it looks. And Gwynne makes this look effortless with his characters. And the next thing I want to talk about is kind of the scale and scope of this book, because some people might take a look at this book and think, oh gosh, Spoken Shelf, this looks like a long book. How big are we talking about here? Is this even worth it? What's the scale and scope of this book like? Well, let me tell you, because I think it's important for context for how you approach this book. Malice is the first volume in a 5-book series, and Gwynne is not writing these self-contained stories with a shared cast. He is writing one enormous story that's divided into 5 parts. The distinction matters because that means for the first volume is that Gwynne is not racing towards resolution. He's laying foundations, which is what Malice is, establishing the geography, the history, allegiances, and consequences across this canvas that he is painting that will not be fully revealed until the final page of the final book. And for some readers, that will be a frustration. The first third of Malice in particular asks for patience. Characters are introduced, relationships are established, the theological architecture of the world is carefully constructed. There are passages where the momentum might slow a little bit, to sometimes closer than a walk than a gallop, but hear me when I say this, guys, because a lot of times some people don't want to have patience for this, but trust the architect, trust John Gwynne on this, because Gwynne knows exactly what he is building. Every character introduced in those early chapters matters. Every relationship established pays dividends. Every piece of history laid down becomes load-bearing later. This is not a writer who sprawls carelessly. This is a writer who plans. And by the time Malice reaches its final act, that final act is extraordinary. You'll understand why the patience was required. The emotional weight of those closing chapters is only possible because the groundwork laid in these opening chapters. So it pays off at the end. I hope that makes sense. So have patience with that. It will all make sense in the end. This is epic fantasy that respects both the genre and the reader. It asks something of you, and it repays you back with considerable generosity. Now it's time for the real meat and potatoes of this book, which I'm going to be talking about the action scenes and the battle scenes in this book. So, one thing that John Gwynne does better than almost anyone else currently in the epic fantasy genre is writing a battle sequence. Because when Malice picks up and moves, it moves. And the contrast with its quieter opening chapters is not just jarring, it is earned. When the violence arrives, it arrives with full consequence because Gwynne has spent the preceding pages making you care deeply about the people that are in the middle of it. His combat writing is a masterclass in clarity, guys. This sounds like a small thing, but it's not. Action sequences in epic fantasy have a long and distinguished tradition of being utterly incomprehensible, a blur of named weapons and unnamed bodies where geography kind of just dissolves and consequence evaporates. Gwynne does none of that. Every fight has a location, every blow has a cost. You always know where everyone is, what they are risking, and what losing could mean to them. The one-on-one combat is, in particular, it feels really grounded in something real. There is weight to it. A physicality that suggests Gwynne understands not just the drama of violence, but the mechanics of it as well. Swords are not just magic wands. Bodies get tired, mistakes are permanent, sometimes deadly. And then there are just the larger set pieces in general, the battles that involve hundreds, sometimes thousands of combatants. Here, Gwynne demonstrates a different kind of skill entirely in his writing, the ability to maintain both the macro and the micro characters simultaneously. You feel the sweep of the battle and the terror of it for the individual and everyone else that's there at the same time. And if you read read the last book that I reviewed, or even saw the last video that I had on it, In Between Two Fires, it's a different type of violence here. It's horror, and it kind of just erupts into violence. Malice is different in the case where you never forget the cost of human life, and the violence builds, and it builds and builds and gets to a boiling point, rather than just coming and erupting out of nowhere, like In Between Two Fires. The action in this book will make your pulse quicken. I promise you that. The next part I want to talk about here, guys, is the themes that you see in this book and why it speaks to me and why I love this book so much. So we're going to look beneath the surface of the battles and the world building, because Gwynne is doing something thematically serious in Malice, and it deserves to be named. And what I mean by that is there is a tension of this book that's not between just armies and kingdoms. It's between fate and choice. The world of the Banished Lands operates under this prophecy, a foretelling of a great war, a champion who will stand against the darkness of sides that must be chosen and costs that must be paid. And into that prophetic framework, Gwynne kind of places characters who are entirely stubbornly human in their uncertainty. Corbin, our main heroine here, he doesn't want to be a champion. He wants to just protect his family. He wants to understand the world he lives in like anyone else. He's not running toward destiny. He is simply trying to survive it. And that resistance to the heroic template is one of the most honest things that Gwynne does in these books. Because in a world where gods are real and prophecy has weight, the question of whether your choices are truly your own become genuinely urgent. And running alongside that is this theme of loyalty and what that means and what that costs and where its limits are. Every significant relationship in this book is tested and allegiances shift. Trusted figures disappoint, and yet Gwynne does not conclude that loyalty as naive. He concludes that it is a discipline, something that's practiced and renewed rather than simply felt. And then there's this theological dimension, the question of what it means to live in a world where good and evil are not abstractions, but active, present, competing forces, where the side you choose has a cosmic as well as a personal consequence. Gwynne doesn't resolve these questions, but he asks them with genuine seriousness. And in a genre that can sometimes mistake scale for depth, that seriousness has its own reward to it. It makes this story and these books extremely satisfying to read. So, where does this lead as far as the verdict? Where does Malice land? Well, John Gwynne has written something rare with Malice and these other books. This first volume in this epic series generally justifies the scale it demands. That earns its ambition. That asks for your patience, and then it pays off with considerable interest. This is not a perfect novel by any means. The opening third will kind of test readers who come expecting immediate momentum. Again, have patience, trust the process. The multiple point view structure will ultimately be very rewarding. It requires an investment of attention to the reader that not everyone will like at first, but again, trust the process. And Gwynne's prose, while clean and effective, does not have the literary ornamentation of the genre's finest stylists, but again, trust the process. It's going to make up for it, guys. That's probably one of the very few things that I didn't like about the book, is that sometimes I could use a little bit more ornamentation, but I kept going because it was worth it. But here's what Malice does that matters more than any of those little things. It makes you feel the weight of a world. It makes you care about people caught in a conflict larger than themselves. It makes you believe in loyalty and sacrifice and the particular courage of ordinary people who choose to stand when standing is the hardest thing to do. And by the time you reach the final act, and I will say nothing more about it than this, you will understand why readers of this series speak about it with the kind of devotion usually reserved for the genre's untouchable classics. Who is this book for? It is for readers who love Bernard Cornwell's historical grit, David Gimmel's heroic heart, and the cosmic ambition of the very best epic fantasy. It is for readers who are willing to walk before they run, because what waits at the end of what the walk is extraordinary. I would also compare this to, you can definitely see aspects of, Tolkien in here, and Robert Jordan of Wheel of Time. You can definitely see Gwynne's influences from these older epic fantasy writers in these books. And so if you love those types of authors, you will love his books as well. Malice is the beginning of something special. And here at The Spoken Shelf, your head librarian here, I highly recommend it. So, thank you guys so much for watching. I am The Spoken Shelf. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And till next time, guys, keep on reading and have a great day.